Turn our attention to the Women's Champions League from last night. Gilly Flaherty, delighted to say, joins us, the UEFA licensed coach and former professional footballer. Morning, Gilly. How are things?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yourselves?
All good here. Thanks for popping on. I guess we have to talk Chelsea-Barcelona first of all. And Chelsea earning a draw at the Nou Camp, or at Barcelona, the first team to do that in 4 years, which is quite impressive. Not enough to get them in over the line into the final, but they've come a long way from that thrashing in the final a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and obviously I covered both legs, and you could tell that there was probably a nervousness about Chelsea. I do think that obviously a lot of people have been talking about their previous game and the result and being 4-0 down at half time, and I do feel that there wasn't, I wouldn't say fear, but I think that was in the back of players, management's minds, in regards to the way they set up. Listen, Barcelona are one of the best, if not the best in the world, and you have to give them that respect too. But obviously to go to the Nou Camp, only be 1-0 on the night, it is positive for Chelsea. There is a part of me though that would, when watching the game, I just thought, are you going to go for it? Because, it's the Champions League semi-final, you need to sort of risk it. But yeah, I think Chelsea can hold their heads up high, and listen, Barcelona, like I said, are the best in the world.
How impressive was it that Chelsea, regardless of the result over on aggregate, in the end, they responded? Like 4 minutes after Barca take the lead, they get the goal back. They're pushing for a winner there in front of 70,000 fans as well. So they didn't let the heads drop when Barcelona took the lead last night either.
No, I mean, they kept going for it. But obviously with Chelsea, they played a 3-5-2 over these two legs, which they haven't really done in the WSL. So they had to play a different way. Obviously in the WSL, they're used to having possession of the ball a lot of the time in games, but it was different for them. Barcelona had the possession for majority of the game, and they had to just be patient. But I mean, Maren Mjelde and Magdalena Eriksson, who have been in and out of the team this year, obviously with Millie Bright and Kadisha Buchanan both being missing, injured, they come in and they were both fantastic over two legs. Like, they dealt with Barcelona's front line incredibly well, and I mean, they've earned their spot, going forward. And obviously people were talking about Millie Bright and Buchanan being two big losses for Chelsea, but Magdalena Eriksson and Mjelde really stepped up.
Will it play into Chelsea's hands at all in terms of the title race? I mean, they probably have they don't have the points on the board over Manchester United, but they have those games in hand and an FA Cup final to look forward to as well. So in one sense, albeit a Champions League final would have been brilliant, but they can now fully concentrate on the domestic trophies.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Champions League is the one trophy that Emma wants, and the club want more than anything, but it's just not to be this year. And obviously now that's done and dusted. They have, like you said, they've got the FA Cup final to focus on. I mean, tonight, obviously, Man United and Villa play. Chelsea don't play till next week, so they'll have 3 games in hand on Man United after tonight's game. If Emma's always said about whether the team are best chasing or being the ones leading the pack, and she's experienced both as a manager. So for Chelsea, they're in the best situation because she's going to be a manager who'll say, listen, we just focus on us. It doesn't matter if United keep winning, because ultimately it's in Chelsea's hands to lose. If Chelsea win the remaining games, they'll be champions. But if they slip up, then obviously it's harder to get those points. So they do have the games in hand. And obviously at the moment, they're 4 points behind United with 2 games in hand. But obviously that will go to 3 tonight. So it's in their hands to lose.
What's your sense of how that plays out, Gilly? Obviously, we've seen in the Premier League how a team have been keeping the seat hot for the inevitable push from another team. Is that the case for this United team, that once Chelsea use up those games in hand, that ultimately they're going to, as you see it, to pip United? Or are United showing signs already that they're the best team in the country?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar. I was listening to a conversation last night where they were saying, 2 ex-men footballers were saying how Arsenal have led the way in the men's Premier League, but they don't have the experience, whereas City obviously do. And it's a bit similar to the women's game, because a lot of people have been saying about Man United, they don't have the experience of leading all the way. Obviously, last season they led up until Christmas, and obviously then they started dropping points. But people have been saying that they're waiting for them to slip up. But United keep proving people wrong, and all they keep doing is keep winning 3 points. And that's all they can do, is focus on themselves. But like I said, it's Chelsea's really to lose, because they do have the games in hand. And if they win the remainder of their games, then obviously they do win the league. But Obviously, you've still got some big games coming up for both clubs. There still will be points dropped going forward, but yeah, I mean, United just got to do what they keep doing and keep proving people wrong and picking up the points.
That United Villa game tonight, Gilly, like United showed a lot of positive attitude in the win over Arsenal last weekend. So clearly that when it comes to the big games and the title-defining games, they know how to get the results over the line. But Villa have been impressive this season, and not least of late. So that game tonight is going to be a pretty epic one, you'd imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, I watched I was covering the Man United Arsenal game at the Lee Stadium, and in all honesty, it was quite a boring game, to be honest with you. It weren't, both teams are sort of not wanting to make a mistake. They was like trying to suss each other out, but you knew that it would end up being a mistake from one team for a player to get through. But if you're looking at obviously Aston Villa's form, probably since Christmas onwards, they've been unbelievable. And so it's not going to be an easy test. Obviously, they're going to Aston Villa's ground too, which isn't the most easiest stadium to go to and the easiest pitch to play on. But I mean, it'll be an exciting game, but they know they've got to play these tough, difficult games to win the league and to pick the points up.
I wanted to ask you before we touch on some more of those games on the comments from Daniel Levy this week as well, Gilly, because they've caused a little bit of consternation, understandably. So for anyone who hasn't heard these, he thinks the WSL should get rid of relegation and promotion, adopt a single table format. His logic is that clubs would feel more comfortable investing in the women's team if they knew that they were guaranteed top flight football, I guess. And then the counter argument is that if owners just invest, relegation won't be a concern regardless. So what's your take on all this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, when I saw that come out, I had to be very careful with what I wanted to put something out on Twitter, but Twitter can be a very dangerous place for those sort of things. But for me, my point would be, would he still be feeling the same way if Tottenham weren't in a relegation battle themselves? Everyone sort of come out and said he's only saying this because his club, after they have invested in it because they went and signed Beth England for 250,000 in January. They're currently sitting 3 points off the bottom, and they are in the relegation battle. So would he still have the same opinion? For me, I personally like the method of promotion and relegation. And the thing is with the WSL, like a lot of people, including myself, have been pushing for the league to increase and for the relegation places to increase as well to 2, because the championship below, quite a lot of them now, if not most teams, are full time. They're pushing each other all the way, and then you've only got one promotion place. So, I mean, I'm one of those people who support the 2 up, 2 down. But I don't agree at all with no promotion and no relegation. But my point would be, would he still feel the same if Tottenham weren't sitting 4th from bottom or 3 points off the bottom?
There's a whiff of Super League greed off it, isn't there? It's like, it's almost get rid of the jeopardy and keep the money.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you can't. Women's WSL doesn't need necessarily a huge amount of investment in your clubs compared to obviously what the men's team does. But it's just sort of, I don't know, the time it come out, it was after the men had just got thumped by Newcastle. Was it sort of a deflection from that? I'm not too sure, but I like the WSL how it is. I've played in the WSL my whole career since it first founded, and I don't personally want it going to a no relegation, no promotion league.
I wanted to ask Gilly just about the role of Everton over the next few weeks as queen makers almost. It feels almost like a ridiculous thing to say in some regards, given that they're kind of petering their way to a mid-table finish. They've not an awful lot to play for ahead of them, and they're not going to get dragged into the battle below them. But they do have Chelsea next weekend, they've Arsenal after that, and they've City before the month is out. Not a great run for them, but in their role as queen makers, they could be really important in terms of where the title ends up.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been at West Ham where we was in the position towards the end of the season where you're safe from relegation, you can't win nothing, but you know that you can have a say in where the league goes. And for that as a player, when you do have that, not that bitterness because you think I can't win nothing this year, you do have it where you say, well, listen, if we nick points off this team, that's going to affect this and that's going to affect that. And you want to be the party spoilers a little bit. I remember my last season there, we had Arsenal in the last game of the season, and Chelsea were playing Man United, and it could have gone to Chelsea's ground or it could have gone to Arsenal, depending on the result. And I remember Man United were winning and all the Arsenal fans were cheering, saying, like, they're winning, like, we're going to win the league, as long as obviously they beat us. And then, we ended up losing 2-0 anyway. But the whole thing of we could stop them winning the league, especially at our ground as well, we didn't want that happening. But then Chelsea went on to win anyway, so didn't really matter what Arsenal done. But that's a pretty dangerous position to be in regards to the likes of Everton, Liverpool, who are sitting mid-table, that they can be party spoilers 100%.
On Arsenal, you mentioned you've brought them up, so we might as well touch on them as well, Gilly. But that comeback draw against Wolfsburg midweek, hugely impressive. I know you said you watched them against United last weekend, but to come back then and get the 2 goals to bring back to the Emirates next week, I guess we overused the word mentality probably, but the injury crisis that's going on at the club and the fact that they can still keep going back to the well and pick up results like they did in midweek in Germany, quite impressive.
Yeah, and obviously being at the United Arsenal game when obviously Leah Williamson went down, and you just think, straight away a lot of people knew that it was a serious injury, but for them to lose Leah, to lose Kim in the same week, really, you've got Caitlin Ford who's been out struggling with injury. Obviously you now got Steph Catley back, which is huge for them, but the idea of them going into, because obviously when they said about Kim Little being injured, the idea then everyone knew really that Leah Williamson would then go into midfield. So then to lose Leah Williamson from midfield, you've then got potentially not an inexperienced back line, because Jen Beattie come in, who is a very experienced player and has done the business for Arsenal and for Scotland. But then you're not taking your strength from the centre-back into the midfield because you've now lost her too. So I think going into that Wolfsburg game, again, a lot of people thought they've got too many injuries, it's not going to happen. And then obviously going down, conceding so early and so poorly as well, I think a lot of people thought the floodgates are potentially going to open. But they've got fantastic spirit and fantastic fight to come back into that game, not just to make it 2-1, but to go 2-2. To bring that back to the Emirates, where you potentially got a sellout crowd as well. And I was there for the game, the home leg against Bayern Munich, and the fans were incredible. So if the fans are going to be the same, if not better, then for me, they'll push Arsenal on. And Wolfsburg didn't look that great as well, to be honest with you. They looked a bit nervy and shaky. So playing at the Emirates with a home crowd the size of that, you've got nothing to lose, really, because no one's probably backing you, really, to win it because of the fact of you'd lost so many injuries. But I don't know what Jonas Eidevall's doing there, but he's got them believing and that they can go on, and whether it be there from a losing position or winning position, that they can go on and get the results.
And that's something that's been very impressive from Jonas Eidevall as well. I know he has spoken in press conferences about the fatigue and maybe the calendar as well, and the amount of games that are coming at his team, but the fact that he's managed to get more and more out of this team regardless. And I think the same has been said of Brighton this week in the relegation battle as well. Fatigue is a word that keeps cropping up in the WSL because of the fixture congestion, but teams, especially Arsenal at the moment, seem capable of dealing with it.
Yeah, it is difficult because you look at the other side of things and the fixture congestion, but you look at Liverpool, for example, who they'd played a game and they hadn't played a game for 3 weeks. And I remember when I come on here in January, I think they'd said that they had a month until their next game. So it is the other side of the spectrum as well, where it's sort of, you've got a lot of games for clubs like Arsenal, Chelsea, for example, who are in the Champions League. They're through the latter stages of the Cups, compared to the likes of, say, Liverpool, who went 3 weeks and 4 weeks without a game. And not just once too. So it is difficult. And obviously then you're looking at the players from Arsenal and Chelsea, who Man City, Man United, who all go away and play for England and their countries, and they play a lot of minutes for their countries too. It's about getting that balance. And obviously it is going into a World Cup year as well. But for me as a footballer, I loved playing games. I prefer to play games than train. But I know I was fortunate enough not to be on the receiving end really of much injuries. But it is difficult, but that's why you have the squads and you have the depth for people to step up.
Where do you stand then? Because it leads nicely into that point about the FIFA introducing that mandatory release period to protect player welfare, obviously in the lead into the World Cup. And we saw before the Euros that the experience last year of obviously a lot of teams, England including, getting players in early. What are your thoughts on that kind of piece where I guess the ultimate point is to try and protect player at all costs?
Yeah, I do think it's important. I think because of the fact of we've got we had the Olympics, then we had the Euros, because of COVID. Then we've got the World Cup. Then next year we've got the Olympics again. Then the Euros. It's like they're going to have a while until they have their break. So for me, it's important. And whether it be 2 weeks, you know, I feel like sometimes a lot of countries potentially feel like they're going to lose a lot of fitness during those 2 weeks. And players don't really rest for 2 weeks either. They'll be still ticking over. And players are not silly, you know, they can't afford to have 2 weeks of literally not doing nothing because you're going into a World Cup. So they're professionals, you know, they'll still keep ticking over. But I think the mental side of it, like to go from a season then in potentially into a pre-tournament camp where you're away for 4 weeks or whatever, it is difficult. And you have to look after people emotionally and mentally as well as physically, because no, sometimes your body can be fine in regards to fatigue, but mentally you're tired. And that makes you feel even worse physically, you know, but really in regards to loading and stuff, you might have had a quiet week, but if you're tired up here, then it makes no difference really in regards to how fresh you are body-wise, because that will make you feel tired anyway. So we've just got to look after and protect players because we've got a busy few years coming up. Can
Manchester City still have a role in this title race, Gilly? Because the win over one of your other former clubs, West Ham, the 6-2 win was quite emphatic last time out, and they still look like they're right in the fight.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they've got to play Man United too. They're 3 points off of United, same games played. So again, you're looking at that fixture. You one of them's going to drop points, if not both of them. But again, I think with City, they are a team that are just focusing on themselves. Obviously, they've not got the FA Cup final to think about. They're just literally got the league to focus on, and I think that will help them. But they're experienced at doing it. I mean, that they had a bit of a tough start, a bit of a rocky start, but they've managed to get themselves up into second place. So yeah, I think they'll do good. I think they'll get in the Champions League spots. But again, teams are going to drop points against each other, so it's exciting to see what happens.
Can I just ask you very briefly finally on Katie McCabe as Arsenal captain? I guess all these injuries have led to the armband having to be thrown around different stages of the season, but from an Irish perspective, I guess we love to see Katie taking on that leadership role that she has at times with her country as well. So it's good to see, and someone who clearly is a born leader.
Yeah, I mean, she is. I mean, she stepped up for Arsenal as well. Obviously, losing Kim, losing Leah, she's got the armband on at the moment. But again, she has that fight, she has that tenacious side of her, which was needed against Wolfsburg. You know, she wasn't afraid to put her foot in, and it'll be players like Katie McCabe who will lead this Arsenal team on going forward into what is the business end of the season.
Gilly, thanks a million as always.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gilly Flaherty on the line to look ahead to pretty interesting weekend of WSL and beyond as well.